Good evening and welcome back to CNN Money Switzerland and our ongoing coverage of coronavirus. I'm Olivia Chang. Let's start off by taking a quick look at the situation here in Switzerland. More than 17,000 people have now tested positive for coronavirus in the country. At least 378 deaths have been reported. Globally, there are over 860,000 cases of infection and over 42,000 deaths. Meanwhile, today the Swiss government said that 10.6 billion Swiss francs in emergency loans have now been allocated towards SMEs or small to medium enterprises. That's more than one half of the initial 20 billion Swiss francs in funding that has been committed. In a press conference just today, the Federal Council said that more than 1 million employees are in partial unemployment, or almost a fifth of the active population. It's considering expanding its support for companies, and in particular for independent or freelance workers who have lost their income as a result of the pandemic. Right now, there are more than 270,000 independent or freelance workers who do not receive any form of support. Bringing you our top story tonight, airport ground services company Swissport has lost between 70 to 80% of its global revenue due to coronavirus. Now, grounded fleets and travel restrictions have made services like airline check-ins and baggage handling basically redundant in some airports. Now, earlier I did speak to CEO Eric Born, and he said it was virtually impossible to cut costs fast enough. Take a listen. Let's jump right into it. Your business depends on people traveling, depends on planes being filled. How critical is the situation right now for you?
Well, the situation is extremely critical and it's unprecedented. We basically within a very short period of time have lost 70 to 80% of our global revenue, which is normally north of 3 billion euros per annum. So it is absolutely critical, as it's almost impossible for us to reduce cost fast enough in order to make sure the cash burn is somehow sustainable.
Swissport has some 65,000 employees as part of its arm. How many of those jobs are at risk right now?
Look, we have governments across the world have been very flexible for us in order to implement measures to reduce the cost burden on us, for example, to furlough people or to have economic unemployment and schemes like that. So we hope that we can manage through the crisis by furloughing people with the help of those government schemes and bring them back whilst when the revenues and the flight traffic comes back. But overall, just to give you an order of magnitude, by the end of April, we will have laid off or furloughed around 40,000 of our colleagues globally. So our headcount will be reduced from 65,000 to 25,000. And depending on how deep the crisis will be, we might have to reduce further. But again, the aim is to keep the people, to have the people off the payroll for the time being, but keep them as employees so we can ramp up again once we are through this crisis.
I mean, this is a very significant chunk of your company that you are talking about. Where else could you potentially be cutting costs this quarter?
Look, we are looking at all different cost-cutting measures which we can. So we have reduced all variable cost. We try to reduce fixed cost and make at least some components of those costs variable. We talk to all our suppliers and so on. We have postponed or we didn't execute variable pay components to management. I have taken a 50% reduction of my base salary as we go through this crisis. I think we do everything we can, but you have to remember that 70% of our cost base is indeed personnel costs. So that's by far the biggest cost element which we have. So we have to work on that pretty fast.
So it seems that Swissport is really at its slimmest it can be right now. You've called on the Swiss government for a rescue package. You want state aid. If you don't get that, are we talking about a potential collapse here?
Look, my job is to make sure that we will explore all different avenues we can to get incremental liquidity into the company so we can withstand that storm which we are currently in. So, we started this crisis with very good pro forma liquidity. We had 300 million of liquidity in our balance sheet by February this year. So we actually start from a strong position. But if depending on how long this goes, we can't sustain for a long period of time with just 10 or maximum 20% of our revenue, given that we can't lay off all the cost.
Let's take a look at a post-coronavirus period. Even if some airlines manage to survive this period and make it through, if we don't have the middleman and players, what could that potentially mean for airport operations, for example?
Well, it would basically mean that the airport will not operate. Companies like us, we manage the turnarounds of aircrafts on the ground handling side. We do the passenger services, the luggage. On the cargo side, we make sure that cargo gets handled. So if our industry doesn't survive, even if the airlines and the airport survive, the system will still not work, and the global aviation sector will still have a standstill. So that's why it's really important that not only the airports and the airlines survive, but in order to have the connectivity secured of people traveling, but also goods flowing, it's absolutely critical that ground and cargo handlers survive through the crisis.
Oil producers are having their worst quarter in history, hit by a double whammy of shrinking demand and swelling supply amid the crisis. The price of Brent crude hit an 18-year low this week. Energy expert Cornelia Meyer spoke to my colleague Hannah Wise and warned that we may not have seen just the worst of it.
If demand surges too fast, can we keep up producing, and will we then see the reverse and going into too high oil prices? That is a real danger. I think Goldman Sachs came out with a note on Tuesday voicing those fears.
And how, you say that you worry about heightened oil prices, but what kind of low end prices are you expecting?
Low, it can go below
$10
at some stage. And what worries me also is when we come out of this, there was a note by Larry Fink, the chairman of BlackRock, which was published in the night between Monday and Tuesday, where he said, when we come out of this, consumer behavior, business practices, everything will have shifted, and that means supply chains and interconnectivity will have shifted. So if that is the case, which in parts it may be, that may mean localization of some supply chains, which is something we have seen already started with the trade war between the US and China. If that happens, that will mean a reduction in the demand for oil. So we really need to see the shape of the market. There is one more thing. If you look at the recovery, the low oil prices may actually be a benefit, because as we start up our economies again, it may be better to pay $20 or $30 a barrel than $60 or $70 a barrel, just in that first phase of getting markets started.
Okay, and I'm going to ask you one last question. While we are not consuming oil, where is all this oil being stored?
That is the big question. We're running out of storage. There's floating storage, there's all sorts of storage. But if you look at refineries, refinery runs have been reduced by around 20%. So it's not just crude, it's product that's being stored as well, which is unheard of. So this is really very hard. I really have no clue where to store it. I think oil storage may be a booming business for the next few months.
All right, we'll leave it there. Cornelia Meyer, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Coding against COVID-19. More than 1,000 people have now signed up for the online hackathon versus virus that's supported by the Swiss government. My colleague Tanya Koenig caught up with co-organizer Nikki Böhler to get the latest.
I'm now joined by Nikki Böhler. She's one of the team members behind the hackathon versus virus that is taking place from the 3rd to the 5th of April. Hi, Nikki.
Hi, Tanya.
So tell me, what exactly is the idea behind this hackathon?
The idea is to gather all the energy and engagement that we have at the moment to fight together against this crisis and against the challenges that we face. So we are at the moment gathering challenges from all parts of society as diverse as possible, and gathering participants for the weekend, also as interdisciplinary as possible. And the idea is that we will collaborate in teams in order to solve the most relevant challenges that we have in Switzerland during 48 hours. Of course, in this short time, we can't develop perfect apps and solutions, but we will have starting points and fundamentals to build upon. And it's like a hackathon is like a playground, so you can really test different things and have different perspectives in a team, which usually don't come together.
How many people have registered to take part in this hackathon so far?
The newest number I heard was over 1,000. I think that was yesterday evening or this morning.
And that's mostly from Switzerland?
That's mostly from Switzerland, but I think we are not even asking for that information. We don't know actually where the participants are coming from. We are asking for skill sets and personality types, so we are making sure that we can really put interdisciplinary teams together and that we have all types of personalities covered, more or less balanced in the hackathon.
How did you guys come up with the idea of that? I saw it there. I think it was inspired by this other hackathon in Germany, Wir versus Virus. Am I correct?
Yes, exactly. Wir versus Virus was started by Impact Hub, Prototype for Open Knowledge, and many other organizations in Germany. And we realized very soon that this is an amazing idea, and we want to do this as well. We want to gather energy as well. And we also discussed from the beginning, what exactly do we want to achieve? What do we want to copy from Germany? How do we want to adapt it to the local circumstances? And we discussed that for 50%, it's about the results that we produce, and 50% is also just about gathering people around a positive idea and collaborate with a positive energy and give hope and something to do to the people out there who are all in a difficult situation at the moment.
China managed to build a hospital in just 6 days in Wuhan. Now the UK is following suit after giving itself a week to convert the Excel Convention Centre in London into a hospital. Set to open this week, it can house up to 4,000 beds. CNN's Paton Walsh reports.
Well, this is NHS Nightingale, potentially 4,000 bed capacity pop-up hospital here in just over a week, and behind me is very much the showcase of what they want us to see about the United Kingdom's readiness for the surge in cases they think could possibly be happening in the week ahead. But it is still a work in progress, tireless effort to get up these separate booths in an area which was an empty conference centre just 10 days ago. A startling bid, to be sure, that in the event that they have to receive the overflow from other hospitals in London, that the equipment and the beds are ready here.
We will only receive patients who are COVID-19.
So you have to have a positive test to come here?
That's right. I understand that if we have to open all our beds, then yes, I believe we will be one of the biggest hospitals.
But of course it's important, they stress, this will not be a hospital that directly receives patients. They'll have to coordinate the task of trying to work out who amongst the other facilities around London and the United Kingdom urgently needs this kind of help, and also manage expectations.
It's worth emphasising over and over again that actually this is a hospital that gets referred to by another NHS hospital. So we don't have an A&E, we don't have a front door. It's really important that any critical care nursing who could volunteer, recently retired or domiciled elsewhere, if they came back into the system, that would be excellent for us, because those are the ones that are in the shortest supply.
There's been a lot of publicity about what this venue might be able to do, but in the weeks ahead they'll find out what the limits of that exactly are and also the troubling truth about exactly how many patients there will be that require intensive care in the surge in the United Kingdom that could possibly happen over the next 2 to 3 weeks. It's the only country whose leader has been tested positive for coronavirus, and the efforts here are a bid to reassure people in the UK that everything that's possible is being done to be sure they're ready for whatever numbers come in the weeks ahead.
Think 2 weeks of isolation is hard? Try months in space. Former NASA astronaut reflects on his time in space and how it compares on the ground during coronavirus.
You kind of settled in. It takes a few weeks, but you settled into a new normal. And I think that's what we're going through right now. What's different is the normal world is right outside our door. It's just not real normal right now with the fear of the pandemic and everything. And those are justified fears. And so I think in ways it's harder for us because we're here and we're still working with our normal jobs as best, for those that have them as best we're able. And so other elements of life, you could theoretically go out and get in your car and go anywhere and do anything, but it's not safe to do that. And so we're having to internalize that, and we're having to realize that it's not safe. And I've got to do my part to slow and stop the transmission of this disease.
That's all for now. Remember, you can stay up to date with all of our coverage by heading over to our Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube platforms. And remember, all of the content is being live streamed over at our website, cnnmoney.ch. In the meantime, take care, and we will see you tomorrow.